bookworms! So today I'm coming to you with a new series that I'm gonna do, which is reading through Latin America. So by that I mean every Hispanic country slash Latinx slash in Central South America. So it does include a lot of countries. I'm thinking from Mexico to the end, so Argentina slash Chile. And yes, I actually filmed this video yesterday, but it was right after the gym. So I was trying to edit this morning, and actually I'm like, do I put a clip? Maybe. If not, I'm basically just breathing like like you can see I'm still dead from the workout. So I was like, and it was nighttime anyway, so the lighting was weird. So I thought I might as well just refilm it. It was a fairly short video, and I think, yeah, I think this will be better. And I think I should try to keep in mind that filming after working out is just not gonna do it for me. Because it's one of my goals in general with my reading, I do try to read at least a book from a country I haven't read. Whenever I see one coming like my way or like that I'm interested in, I try to prioritize those books, or at least have them in my radar as like, this book is set in this country I've never read before, so I kind of have it in mind that I want to read it. And it is the case with a lot of those, and I actually read a lot of books from these countries, and I want to go through all of them. But yes, very happy with myself with how many of those I've read from, and I don't have that many left to read. But because I do like other challenges and I still read I'm very much a mood reader, so because I like that, I think what I'm gonna do with this series is I'll try to pick 2 to 3 books to read for the next month. And so for this series, you'll have a monthly update of how I'm going. I calculated that I have around 7 countries left to read, so I'm gonna say like 3-4 updates coming your way. So in the next 4 months we'll see that. It might be faster, it's just that because I read a lot of different things. So for example, in October I'm mainly gonna read a lot of like horror kind of fantasy books. Same with winter, I like reading fantasy books, and like fairy tale retailers in winter. So if they don't really fit, or if they're very summery books, I may put it off until like next year, or until at least the very end of this series. For now, I already, because I filmed it yesterday, I already know the books I'm gonna pick for the next month. But regardless, I still wanna go through the list with you guys so you can know where I'm at, what I've read, and also to recommend you books. So if you're looking for a book set in a specific country, or you wanna read from an author of a specific country, here I'm gonna do the list, and you can always pick one of those books. Honestly, going through them yesterday, they're all books I very much enjoyed. So think of this as also a recommendation list, because I basically enjoyed all the ones that I've read so far. So we'll start in alphabetical order. It just makes more sense for me. And the first one is Argentina. So for Argentina, the one I would highly recommend, and the author I would highly recommend, is Mariana Enriquez. So the last one that I read was The Dangers of Smoking in Bed. And I love so much her short story collections. They're so eerie and spooky, and they're very different, so you get a different kind of spook from them. And just really, really love her writing, and the translation is also very well done. You probably have heard of her, or at least know her for her novel. So it's Our Share of Night, which I'm gonna put here, and it's like her thick book. And for that reason, I haven't read it yet. I'm very intimidated by that book, although I'm pretty sure I'm gonna love it, because I just really, so far, liked all her short story collections and the writing that she does. So it is definitely a different format also, and I feel like we went from 0 to 100 real quick. So we go from short stories to this like super chunky book. But because I like her writing, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna enjoy it. But yes, it's just the size is really intimidating for me. But yes, author I would recommend, and like her latest short story collection that I read, I would also recommend. Now for Bolivia, I haven't read anything from Bolivia. I was surprised because I thought I had, but regardless. So it looks like I didn't. And for this challenge, to make it easier for me, I did already kind of look through books from authors of these countries. So from Bolivian authors, I went through like a few lists to see what book kind of interests me. And I did pick one for this one, which is Fresh Dirt from the Grave by Giovanna Rivero. And I need to see for those ones, either I try to buy them or I try to get them at the library. For sure, my first step is gonna see if I can get them from the library. And if not from my local one, maybe at the big one at Montreal. So I think I'm gonna see first at the libraries if I can get a hold of them. For this next month, this is not one that I'm gonna pick, just because again, I think it's gonna take a little longer whether to request it from the library and everything. So this is gonna be for another time. The next one is Brazil. So for Brazil, I read The Hour of the Star by Clarice Lispector, and I really enjoyed it. I read it this year, I think at the beginning of the year maybe. And it was a short novel, but very interestingly written, because you read it from a point of view of this like very wealthy man, young man, and through his eyes you see kind of what's happening in Brazil and the inequalities, but in this very mean rich boy point of view. So it was an interesting point of view to read from. I would definitely want to read more authors from Brazil, and I do recommend it. I mean, it's a classic, so that's why I read it. So I would definitely recommend it. I feel like it's a classic for a reason. But I definitely want to read more authors, maybe more recent, like contemporary authors. But for this challenge, I did read one recent book from a Brazilian author that I would recommend you to pick up if you're interested. Next is Chile. Very easy one. I did read a few Chilean books this year. The most recent ones that I really enjoy is Nona Fernandez, either her Voyagers or Space Invaders. Both books I really enjoyed. So for those, one is more fiction and the other one is more non-fiction. And I honestly love both. I think she writes well in either genre. And yes, I would definitely recommend you picking her up. Her books are fairly short, so honestly, if you just want to test it out to see if it's your cup of tea, I would definitely go for it. And if you're more into fiction or not fiction, then you can kind of pick which one you would prefer reading from her. But definitely a new author that I absolutely love, and I think I have. So yeah, it's one of the authors that like I'm almost an auto buy. I really want to read all her books, and I'm excited for her next ones. For Colombia, classic, I read a Gabriel Garcia Marquez. I actually read the Chronicles of a Foretold Death. Yes, I think that's the one. I didn't read 100 Years of Solitude, and I think it's because it's so hyped up that I'm scared that it will disappoint me. Not disappoint me, that it's not gonna be as good as I thought it would, as I'm thinking it could be. And yes, I feel like those expectations plus it's still a kind of a chunky book. The mix of the both kind of always makes me push it back to like another time. But I did enjoy the Chronicle of a Death Foretold. I like his writing, so at least I'm positive that I would enjoy his writing. But yes, so I did check for this one. For Cuba, the latest one that I read was, and I'm gonna have to read it out, it's a pretty long title, The Assimilated Cuban's Guide to Quantum Santeria by Carlos Hernandez. And it was such a nice surprise. I really enjoyed it. I think I saw it on BookTube, and if I remember the booktuber, I'll put it in the description, because I had never heard about it until then, and I think they had mentioned it during Latinx Heritage Month also. So anyways, I had put it in my wish list, ended up finding it at the library, and just loved it so much. It was so interesting. It's a short story collection, and it kind of focuses on science. And from there, it goes either like more fantasy, magical realism, a little bit of like suspense. Very fun, would highly recommend it. I don't think I see a lot of people talking about it recently. So if you're ever interested in a short story collection by a Cuban author, you should pick that one up. For Dominican Republic, I of course read Dominicana by Angie Cruz. And I actually have one of her books in my TBR, which is How Not to Drown in a Glass of Water. And great writing. Loved her writing, loved the story. I think, yeah, I did talk about it in another video recently, but yeah, it was just very interesting to be in this point of view of this clash of this young girl. I think she was like 16 maybe or something. She's very young. And her life in DR, and then how she comes about to move to New York, and then from there how she has to cope with being in a new country alone. You know, she doesn't have her family, she doesn't know the language, she is a wife, so this is her new role as a wife also. And yeah, it was heartbreaking at times because she has to be like resilient, or at least become like very thick-skinned as a young person, and it's hard to read at times, but it's not graphic, or it's not violent in that sense, but there's always this tension of something bad could happen. And I feel like it was there during her, before, when she lived with her family in DR, and then even at New York. So there's this tension that keeps you in this book of you want to protect her at all costs, and you're like frustrated about the situation, and not about her because she's doing her best. But yeah, so anyways, enough rambling. I would recommend this book from her. For Ecuador, it was actually a nice surprise because it is one of my favorite books of all time, one of my favorite authors of all time, and it's The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina by Zoraida Cordova. And I cannot say enough, well, because I started my channel, so you guys haven't heard it, but basically even the people in my real life know how much I love this book. I keep recommending it. I just love it so much. Just like height for me of an amazing story of magical realism and like family with a mixing of past story and new and mystery and traditions and culture. It's just, oh, it's so rich. It's like such a rich book, and I was hooked. Like chapter 1, I was completely hooked. So yes, I would definitely highly recommend it. Please pick it up. If you have one book to read during this Latinx Heritage Month, let it be this one. I love it so much, and I'll never stop saying it. So I actually started The Incendiary by her, which is like a YA fantasy, or at least a fantasy series that she has. And I just know I'm gonna love it too. So yes, Zoraida Cordova, definitely an author to check out. The next one is El Salvador. So for this one, I read Corazón by Jessica Salgado. I think it's one of my favorite poetry collections that I've read. I think I read it 2 years ago maybe, and I just love it. I always am this close to buying Tesoro, which is her other poetry book, because Corazón just, it got to me, it spoke to me. I love it. And I wouldn't say I'm picky with poetry. It's just, sometimes I feel like it goes over my head. So there's not I don't really seek out that many poetry books. I did find that Latinx poetry books sometimes work for me more, like Promises of Gold I really enjoy. Corazón, there's no denying, I absolutely loved it. And I think there was also a moment where we had those, what did they call it? Instagram poetry? I don't remember, but you know, like the short, concise, Rupi Kaur. Anyways, nothing against her, by the way. I'm thinking Amanda Lovelace, I think she also has, it's kind of like a, you know. So anyways, and the like super classic poetry, like don't even get me started about it. Like those books really go over my head. So yes, for the, like, I'm no expert on poetry, is basically what I'm saying, and it's very much to my taste, but to my taste, Corazón was amazing, and I loved it, and I would definitely recommend. So for French Guiana and Guadeloupe, I didn't read any authors from those countries. So what I found for French Guiana is The Bastards by Bertin Huminer. That looked very interesting, but again, same as the other one. I think I'm gonna see if it's at the library, if it's available. It's an English translation, so it may be more available. And the other one for Guadeloupe, it's The Bridge of Beyond by Simone Schwartzbart. So yeah, we'll see about those. They're in my list of books potentially that I'm gonna pick up in the next months. after, I mean, not in the next month. I'm coming to the one that I'm gonna pick up in the next month. Next we have Guatemala. So for this one I read Don't Ask Me Where I'm From by Jennifer de Leon. And I remember reading it, was it last year? I think it was last year or the year before. But I did read it for our Latinx Heritage Month. And it was interesting because I remember the title really grabbing my attention, and it's been so long. But it was an YA that I remember enjoying because it was, it was in the Angie Thomas kind of vibe, if I can say it. Not in the sense that, of course, it's not exactly the same, but I mean in the sense that it's a point of view of this teenager. I think she's like 16, end of high school, something like that. And you have the normal, so what she's living right now, you know, her friends, her family situation and everything. But it kind of touches on like hard subjects that are very realistic and like very current. And I think that's what I mean with like Angie Thomas. I feel like it's pushing the boundaries a little with those themes. And in that case, of course, we talk about racism, we talk about deportation, and, you know, having kids from like immigrant parents coming in this very white school, and the kind of animosity that can happen when they kind of are in the same spaces but not really, because they're still put like aside from like white students. So anyway, I really enjoyed it. I definitely want to read more from Jennifer de Leon, and yes, I would recommend you if you're kind of looking for a YA that speaks more about those kinds of topics and like a little more hard-hitting. Definitely you can pick this one up. So the next one is Haiti. I read Punching the Air by Ibiza Boy, and honestly I love Ibiza Boy's writing. I actually have another one from her, which is American Street. Yes, American Street. She actually wrote it with Youssef Salam, and to have this fictionalized story of this real event was very interesting. And I actually read it as an arc, but if you go now and see it like a finished copy, if like you want to pick it up, there's like illustrations involved in it, and like because it's very artistic. And yes, it was just really beautiful, really enjoyed it, would recommend you picking it up. So for Honduras, I read Mis Quince by Kat Fajardo, and it was the cutest graphic novel. I read it this year, and oh, I loved it so much. I could so relate to this little kid. And it's set in, so you follow this main character that's Honduran, and every summer she goes to Honduras with her, like, to see her family and with her family and everything. And this specific summer, it's like her quinceañera, and like she doesn't want to do it, and she has her own reason, and it's like a mix of coming of age, but also kind of like how she like headbutts with her mom about the traditions, the what should be done and like what's expected of you. And you also see it with her like older sister, and then and like some of her cousins, and because they grew there, like to them is the most normal thing ever, but of course for her, she's kind of like, she's challenging. That's the thing, she's challenging all the things that are like supposed to happen, more strongly of course with her mom because it's the mom, but just in general with like her family and everything. And I just think it's a really, I could relate a lot to the story, and I really enjoyed that story. So I would recommend the graphic novel. Very cute. I think it was translated, so you have the English and the Spanish version if you want to check it out. So for Paraguay and Peru, I haven't read anything from, like, or I haven't read any authors from these countries. And for Paraguay, what I found that would be interested is An Archipelago in a Landlocked Country by Elisa Tabet. Or if I wanna, like I was saying, poetry, you know, like Latinx authors, there's Yagarete, which are poems by Diego Baez. So I have like two options. Because I saw this poetry collection, I thought, you know, maybe to kind of switch it up a little. And then for Peru, I have The Bad Girl by Mario Vargas Llosa. And I actually own this one. I feel like whenever I looked it up, Mario Vargas Llosa was like the main author that came up. I'm curious to know any female authors, because I feel like it was very male dominated in those lists. So, you know, anyways. So yes, I have it to read, But again, I don't think I want to read it for the next month, only because it's like 400 pages written relatively small. So yeah, because of that, might not pick it up, but definitely in my list of things I will read for Peru. And then the next one is Puerto Rico. So for Puerto Rico, I read Ordinary Girls by Hekira Diaz. So this was a nonfiction that I absolutely loved. That was a 5-star for me. I unfortunately don't own it. It's kind of one of those that I read, loved from the library and would want to own it. And I don't, like, it's been maybe 4 or 5 years. But the way she writes all of it, like, it goes from her more like family issues to like the violences that happen around her and in the country, and to have all of those mixed up, it was just incredible writing. She did it so well, and I can only but highly recommend her if you're looking for a nonfiction that's like really interesting. For Uruguay and Venezuela, I actually haven't read any authors from there, but for Uruguay I have The Grief Keeper by Alexandra Villasante, which I have in my TBR for, I want to say, a few years. I saw it in a recommendation. Again, I think it was in like a Latinx Heritage Month recommendation. Either it was for a reading challenge or something like that. But yes, so I've had it in my like TBR wish list, kind of list that I have on Goodreads for a while. And that one, I think I could get it at the library. And I think it's one that I want to read for this month, just because I have known about it the longest, and I just, yeah, I'd be very interested to read that one. And then for Venezuela, I have It Would Be Night in Caracas by Karina Sainz Borgo. It's so pretty. And yeah, I think that's the second one that I'm going to read this month. It's fairly short. It's 220 something pages. And unfortunately, I did read mixed reviews about this. I think I prefer going into a book a little bit with no expectations. I feel like the more, or I mean, I guess now that it's mixed reviews, I have lower expectations about this book. Because I was going with very high expectations in it. It looks so interesting. And yeah. I think I'm gonna pick this one for like this one, and The Grief Keeper are gonna be my 2 books for the current month that's gonna come. So next month you'll see an update with these 2 books. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna read more for just this iteration. Maybe after I read like more 3 books than 2. It's just that, yeah, because like I said, I have a lot of like reading plans for, until kind of the end of the year. So I think that's gonna be it for that. And then I did want to do a mention on Belize and Guyana. I'm torn a little bit. I kind of did some research on it, and it was, to me personally, inconclusive. There's like a difference between, and which is why at the beginning I was like geographically too, because they are in South America. But from what I understood, a lot of them, I think in an article it was like almost over 50% of them do not consider themselves Latinx, which I would understand, I guess, with their history, and I'd be more curious to still read about it, to read more about like, not the why, but like, you know, like their sense of identity, how do they see culturally, what's the differences, and like how they grew up being in South America, but completely, is it completely different or not? I don't know. I'm not sure about that. I don't know enough about it. But to actually learn more, at least because I'm curious to know, for Belize, I have Becca Lamb by Z. Edgel. And I think I may pick it up at the end. But if you have any like links, information or whatever about that, you know, Belize and Guyana, how it works with them being in South America but not feeling Latinx, or even like, because Latinx Heritage Month is also Hispanic Heritage Month, so is like, do they not even feel like that because they probably speak another language and just culturally it's different? So if you have more information, I would love to learn more about it, but here I'm putting in the list just to like be thorough geographically. So that one I might pick it up towards the end. And for Guyana, I actually did read a book from Guyana. I read In the Key of Nira Gani by Natasha Dean, which I really enjoyed it when I read it at the time. It's a YA novel too, and contemporary. And I just really enjoyed it. There was a focus on music that I don't read a lot of books that have a focus on music. I know there are a lot out there. It's just not necessarily a theme that at the time was like that interesting for me. I think it is more now, but yes, at the time it wasn't something that was really a selling point. But this one, I had received it as an ARC, I think, at that time. And when I finally read it, yeah, it was a nice surprise. I really enjoyed it. I would recommend you checking out Natasha D. And yeah, so that's it. I'll keep you updated. So again, remember, these are like monthly update series, and we'll see afterward if I do another region. But definitely you'll see in the update this one and the Grief Keeper. So until then, happy reading, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye. No estoy pendiente a lo que tú estás haciendo.